The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've, maybe helped us on our path today.
Well, welcome to The Journey. My name is Kevin Polky, and I am the host of The Journey. And today we have a special guest, Laura Adams, and she is with the organization I Care. And really, this is kind of a follow-up from the last two episodes, a couple weeks ago with Nathan Sill, and then last week with Kirsten Edmonds. Both of those individuals shared their story and handful of different things that had gone on in their life. But one of the things that they had in common was that they were both adopted at a very young age. And Laura, so that kind of brings you into our conversation today. But before we get into that, why don't you kind of maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself? What does Laura do for fun when you have an opportunity to have fun?
Yeah, so a lot of my fun revolves around kids. I substitute teach in the schools. I used to help in a reading program here in our school district. I have grandchildren, children. We just love to spend time at the beach and be with family. And that's, really a lot of what I do with my family life and with my entertainment. So.
Awesome. So, and how many kids do you have, and how many grandkids do you have?
Yeah, so we have four of our own daughters, two bio, two adopted from China, and then we have three grandchildren, two girls that are in Chicago, and then one that's in Albuquerque. But he's our first grandson, so they keep us busy, and along with everything else we're doing, we never seem to lack for something to do.
And are you from originally from the Rockford area, or
I'm not. I grew up in Green Bay, but I've lived in Chicago. We lived in Dallas for a while, but moved back to the Windy City, and we just love everything about the Midwest. So we're very happy to be back.
all right? Well, it's glad to have you back in the Rockford area, and I'm glad we had an opportunity to meet a couple weeks ago. So tell us a little bit about you know tell us a little bit about I Care. Tell us how you got involved with the
Yeah.
organization, and what is the primary function purpose of I Care?
Yeah. So thank you for that. And thanks for the opportunity for me to be here. So it's actually the full name is I Care for Adoptive and Foster Families, but we do go by I Care quite a bit just for short. And we got in through our own adoption journey. Prior to adopting, we had already, always been involved with adoption causes, fundraising, helping other families who had adopted. And then when our two oldest were in fourth and seventh grade, we were in Texas living away from family and really wanted to build it. And so we heard, about girls in China and being in the orphanages. And we just had such a heart for that, having our own bio girls. So we decided to add to our family through adoption. And we adopted one in 2006 and then went back and adopted another in 2008, our youngest. She was on a special need waiting list. And we have had such a wonderful experience involved with lots of families. Moved up here, and so the girls started in school up in the Midwest, probably first and third grade. And as they grew older and went into their middle school and teen years, the struggle becomes a little harder. The challenges of being a trans, racial adoption, and just the impact of, their childhood experiences prior to coming into our home. So we, it's just the nonprofit came out of that journey. It started with really watching one of my daughters struggle and having the school have a completely misunderstanding of what was going on and what my daughter was going through. And we decided to make sure that no other family or child would have to go through this again. So we have done over the last 3 years lots of research on the laws and policies governing school mental health care and how it impacts foster, adoptive, and kinship families. And luckily, not only, were we able to find the gaps, find exactly how things might go wrong for our children, but then also provide solutions. There are 2 foundational trainings that we recommend to all parents in schools, and that is TBRI, which is Trust-Based Relational Intervention Training. It comes from the Karen Purvis Institute in Texas. And that's available online through courses that you actually sign up to take. They're facilitated online though, so easy for parents to be able to participate. And then excitingly, this past fall, the National Training Initiative for the Center for Adoption Support and Education came out with a training for school mental health professionals. And that is based on their decade of training child welfare professionals and mental health professionals through a coursework called TAC. So they are already have this evidence-based research put into a program, and everything is free, virtual, and immediately accessible online. And it's accredited by the National Association of Social Workers and the National Board of Certified Counselors. So anyone who wants to take the training, which is 17 hours, I've actually taken it. It's amazing. The feedback I've gotten from schools and superintendents who've taken the training is that it was life-changing, that literally they didn't even know how to support our kids really well, and they lacked the knowledge and the tools to be able to help them and provide for better academic and emotional outcomes. So we're ready to make a change in the world and get this training into the hands of all schools. We launched our nonprofit in February. And already we have 5 school districts in Illinois taking the training, and there's over 800 professionals taking the training throughout the country. So we are really hoping to, we're partnering in a way with the National NTI for CASE, and really trying to promote this training and getting it into the hands of schools.
So, well, that's amazing how much progress you've made in a very short amount of time. So just for our audience that may not have any real experience with adoption and really know about the impact of or what are some of the sometimes struggles or difficulties with that, and then specifically what is it, what has been your experience, not just your own personal experience, but your observation? What is that? What seems to be the biggest thing that, like, let's say in this case, schools, which are our young people are spending the majority of their waking day in school during the school year, and what seems to be, from your observation, what is lacking? And I know this is a generalization, so I know I'm not talking specific about any one school or one profession.
Yes. Yeah. Well, overall, and by the way, I mean, we need our school mental health professionals. They're on the first line of defense sometimes, with kids who struggle. We all know about the mental health care crisis going on. And our state, Illinois, has actually been a leader in providing more access to mental health care through schools. So, we're really excited about that mindset. Where it can break down is that a lot of the policies and codes surrounding mental health care work are now just kind of being applied to schools without really looking at the nature of what each child who has a mental health struggle might need. So for instance, there are policies regarding consent, parental notification, that, I'm not here to necessarily argue the intent of those. They can be good in certain situations, but for these kids, for kids who've been hurt in relationship, they need a very holistic assessment. There's so much to our children's lives that is either missing information, painful information, or when you have a separation from a parent, from the birth parent, that's the most profound trauma that a child could experience. In fact, it's been referred to as the primal wound. And what happens is the child is neurologically now rewired to resist the connection and the belonging that they need to their family. So they will interpret the world differently, wondering if they really belong, if people love them, who they are. They will struggle with, there's 7 key areas. See if I can think of them all: loss, grief, identity, shame, rejection, intimacy, mastery, and control. They really feel like they are survivors. They have gone through a lot. They've had to the biggest decision of their life, which is who their parent is going to be, has been taken from them. And they sometimes feel that, and this is, by the way, an inner consciousness, just like I said, the neurological rewiring. It's not something that they consciously think, but they will feel like they are the only ones in the world, and that they are not loved, and that they don't belong, and that they need to take control of their lives. And in a school setting, if you're giving any type of therapeutic support and you don't know the backstory or the context that this child lived in China for a year in an orphanage, or was found abandoned, and we don't have information on the first month of their life or any of that information, and they're just going off of what they see in school or what a child's reporting to them, they can often get the story wrong. And in our state, we allow for 12 hours of therapeutic support without parental notification of a child. That is almost probably, in a school system, 8 weeks of therapeutic work without ever talking to a parent, finding out what the missing information might be, what the context might be. And what happens then is that there's a different narrative that might be put in place for that child, and it will be reinforced. So that is really, what we struggle as parents. Our goal is to attach to our children. If our children are resisting that, and it's reinforced in an inadvertent way by, someone who doesn't know what the impact of their trauma is, those children can really continue to flounder and continue to struggle, rather than all of us being able to get on board from the beginning, work together as a team. Our nonprofit really promotes collaboration of systems. So we want everybody working together from a shared perspective to be able to support our children.
It's interesting, having obviously been in the clinical counseling field for 34 years, and for a time period, I was a school social worker, and so I completely can see how this would happen, right? And you're right. As a social worker, as a school social worker specifically, there was not any specific training that I experienced. I was in graduate school in the mid '90s, and so I don't recall any specific in-depth training when it came to understanding the impact that an individual goes through when separated unconsciously go through when they're separated from their biological parent. Recently, I just read an article that was given to me by someone who, long story short, the article was given to him. He then, it was such a profound, uh, enlightening to him about what he had been experienced the majority of his life, and that this might be a missing piece. So he ended up starting counseling, and I ended up giving that article to the counselor that works for me, that's going to be working with him, and it gave some insight to what you're talking about. And again, this is something that they talk about, that they're not able to actually put into words, similar to what Kirsten said last week in the interview. It's just
Mhm.
feeling like a puzzle piece that just didn't fit, even though it looks like it should, that
Mhm.
there's just something missing. And so it is interesting. So with that, what is so with the training, what is some of the goal with the training, not only to raise that awareness, and
Mhm.
then obviously to, by being more aware, to not cause harm, right? Which I don't think, I want to believe the best in our, in people, but specifically professions, that like the reason why we have the reason why we have that, so many hours that we can meet with a student without parental consent, is for those unfortunately, those exceptions when the parent is the perpetrator, when the parent is, regardless of its biological or adopted parent, are really the individual who's causing harm, and they don't want the child to be getting assistance. And so, but that, I want to believe, is the minority of times. That's
Mhm.
not the majority of times. And
Yeah.
so,
The
so
problem when you have a policy like that in place, the sense is to use the policy in place, right? And to not, and what will happen with these kids especially is that they are wired to think that they are uh, well, let's just give an example. So I am making a number of presentations this fall to the Illinois School Social Worker Association, the Illinois School Board Association Joint Conference, and have been given permission to share stories from people and parents without, identifying their information. So I'll give you a perfect example. One mom, and for an adopted child, their bonds are very tenuous. They do not have, we missed a lot with our kids. We didn't get the thousands of, heartbeats and eye gazes and everything that goes into, you know, carrying a baby and then having that baby, bond with you. And so to build those bonds, it is a lifetime journey. So, but we still have to be a parent. So there was one parent who, wanted her son to complete homework and just said, "Do you have your homework done?" And their stress and their vulnerability is so high that he just lost it. He said, "You don't love me. Why do I have to do this? You just want to send me back to the orphanage." And the mom was heartbroken. She had asked him to do homework, and here this child interpreted really any type of what's normal for a parent to do as a criticism of himself. And if they go to school and report something like that, or that came up in a therapeutic environment where they didn't have all the information and the context in the story, the parent could seem like a perpetrator, and it can feel like emotional abuse to children when it's really just what, a parent's job is to guide and to love and to hold accountable. And so that's why it's so important, for these kids. We talk about that they really were trying to write a new story. They had a broken narrative. Their sense of their identity and their value and self-worth has been shaken by being, placed in adoption. And we have to build a new narrative. And narrative therapy is what is used for these children. The problem is if you have a school, as you said, unintentionally putting pieces back in that are the wrong pieces, that child will continue to flounder and think, oh, they'll reinforce the fact that, wow, maybe my mom isn't as, good as I thought she was, or feel that they somehow hit the bad luck lottery twice. I, first of all, have been placed for adoption, and now my adoptive family is somehow, not supportive or in some ways, uncaring or abusive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, it does. And I think, yeah, I think there's so many variables, right, that play into it, and each circumstance, is probably a little bit different because, even though there's probably some very common themes with individuals that have been adopted, they don't all respond the same way
Yeah.
to their life circumstances. And because you may have you may have two different individuals and raised in the same household. One may just the temperament of being more compliant just in general, and the other one may be a little bit just temperament wise may push the envelope,
Yeah.
which will
But
make a great entrepreneur, a great salesperson, and those things. But when it comes to doing maybe homework, the compliant individual is going to be seen as the favorable response, and the one who's pushing the boundaries, it seems like being in being in trouble or whatever it may be. So I could see how that could play out, and and I would hope that as this information is coming out, individuals who are going to be an adopted parent they're also being educated on what may unfold.
absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And the great thing about this NTI training, the TBRI training, is it is all supported through the Children's Bureau, the National Children's Bureau in Washington, which is part of the United States Department of Children and Families. And so, we have now the tools to equip everyone to be able to do better. Parents don't know that sometimes when you even ask about homework that a child's going to, react in that way. And so it's important to know what they're already predisposed to believing so that they can, better frame it, be more compassionate. Really, that's what we're aiming for, is for compassion from parents and schools towards these children. It's not the kids who are to blame. It's not the parents who are to blame. It's the trauma. And until we all kind of get behind that, we're going to misinterpret and misunderstand and just really not support these kids well. And, if you look at the numbers, the actual numbers, even kids who are adopted, which is really the goal for so many organizations, they want permanence. If a child's in foster care, let's find him a permanent family. The thing is that piece of paper that says you're adopted does not automatically just magically take away the trauma that happened prior to them coming into the home. And even when adopted, we a lot of times don't have terrific outcomes for academics and, emotions. And we want our kids to be able to flourish and to do better. Some of the stats that are out there for foster kids, the stats are about 80% are going to need mental health services, especially by the time they're between 12 and 17. But even when adopted, adopted kids from foster care will oftentimes, by the ages of 12 to 17, I think it's 60% will need mental health services. For kids adopted from birth, 55% will need mental health services. And for kids adopted internationally, it's 55%. So, really it's a 50-50 chance that a child is going to need, because of their adverse childhood experiences, mental health support. So we need to make sure that people are trained on what their, stuck spots are, is what they call them. Why was I adopted? How do I fit in? And if we can understand how things, how these kids can feel. And, I think the hard thing is, especially for schools, like you said, our kids walk into the schools and they're these, funny, articulate, bright, intelligent children. But it's sort of like a Russian nesting doll. So you see the outside doll, right? But we don't see all the little, younger parts of that child and what happened to them prior. So if we are making assumptions based on what we see and not on what really the truth is, those lies about themselves that they feel about themselves will be reinforced. I don't want any adopted child feeling like they don't belong or that their parents don't love them. This is a lifelong journey, and we need to address it at every developmental age. But kids, like you said, do spend most of their days in school. And so if schools are the place that don't have the training, then we're missing a whole big, possible opportunity to be able to help our children.
Well, and I think, you bring up, with those statistics of individuals, like a lot of times people will think, and therapists as well, will think that if the attachment didn't happen, the bond didn't happen, post birth, right? Then, we're aware of that, attachment disorders and different things like that. But with what you're talking about, and then also with the article that I was referencing earlier, was about the bond that happens pre-birth with the child, with the biological parent. And we also know that there can be harm that happens to the child during that time period as well, developmentally, because of what the mom's exposed to, or what happens to her during that time period, either what she's exposed to, if it's a hostile living arrangement, or if it's what she's ingested or not ingested. There's all those variables. And what you're referring to as well is just that bond that happens in those nine plus months of development. And this is not something that an individual can articulate because they don't have memory of it.
Exactly.
So this idea, or this sense of, I don't feel like I fit, or I don't feel like I, or very quick, to not want to get hurt, so they could sabotage relationships, or they could, or have this sense of, to try not to be rejected, to even try harder to be accepted, right? And so there's a various responses that someone could have, and not know 100% sure why they're doing it.
Oh, for many of us who have multiple adopted children, we're the same loving family, same loving parents, same loving home. And you'll have kids that, will react differently because, they've experienced different traumas that we all don't even know. We just have to be conscious of the fact that they could have, had some really traumatic experiences. I've even had people, we kind of gloss over this idea of adoption. And we talk about things like orphanage care as if it doesn't really, it's just something out there. Well, if you really look at what it would mean to be in an orphanage, and the NTI training is amazing because they have an actual video of babies from an orphanage in China, where you have multiple kids in a room, their bottles are propped up, some are getting the milk, some it's fallen away, they're staring at the ceiling. And if you think night after night after night, my child experienced that for a year, and think that that's not going to have an effect on how she feels, no one showed up when she cried, no one showed up when she was cold. I mean, it is heartbreaking. Some of the videos in the training just, bring tears to your eyes because you just gain this compassion, greater compassion and understanding for what this can do to someone. And you're right, the orphanage piece is one, but just the break from the birth mother, they've matched heartbeats and breaths and rhythms, and they know the mother's smell and they know the mother's touch, and it's all taken away. Even adoption from birth, that is a trauma. And by the way, when you do adoption classes and you get your education, no one uses the word trauma. We try to paint this rosy picture of rainbows and butterflies, and it can be that, and we want that for our kids. We want to rewrite a story of hope, but we also have to understand that the story started with great grief and loss. You had mentioned reactive attachment disorder. That is, a lot of times if there is extreme reactions, our children will be labeled as having that. But really what they're finding is that I don't even know if that is going to be an accepted diagnosis, in the future, because it's really just a child's extreme reaction to great grief and loss, and they're expressing it, just their deep pain. And that's another thing that I feel like the training is so important for schools and professionals, because there are lots of symptoms of grief and loss that overlap with mental illness. And so many of our kids, by the time they get to be teenagers, are already diagnosed with ADD, OD, oppositional defiance disorder, ADHD, anxiety, or like you said, reactive attachment disorder, when really what it is it's adoption loss. And, if we start to medicate or support kids in a way that's not really effective, we're not getting to the root cause of their struggle.
Sure. No, I can definitely see that. And I know that after this conversation and when we post this, I will definitely be sharing this with my therapist and the therapists that I work with and train in the schools that I'm involved with, as well. So Laura, thank you very much for being with us. What if someone wanted to learn more about iCare and wanted to learn more about your passion, your journey? What's the best way to reach out to someone?
Yeah, thank you. Probably through our website. We have a contact. It's www.icareforaaff. So I care for adoptive and foster families. They can also email me at laura@icareforaaff.org. And we do have access. One of the things we really wanted to do with our organization is to be able to link the trainings directly from our website. So anyone interested can immediately start accessing training. As I said, it's 17 hours for the NTI training. I've been working with schools to try to get the school to adopt it from a whole district, because when they do that and a school runs the training or approves of the training, whoever takes it can also get their PEL credits. So it's really a win-win because they're getting all their licensure credits for both schools and for their clinical work. So yeah, we're really excited to get it out there for everyone, and I'd love for people to connect with me.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Laura, for all the hard work you're doing, and obviously it comes from a place of your own experience and the passion that you have for individuals that have experienced trauma and the loss of their experience of being put up for adoption and the adoption process, as well as the parents who are experiencing it, who have have great intent for what they want to be able to do, but as you said, need to be informed and need to be educated on what that is, as along with our mental health workers. So again, thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
If for some reason that anything that Laura shared today and you think it might be helpful for some, this is like many things that we talk about here on the journey. the best way that you can do this is pass this information along, have conversations with people that you know about it so that other people can be informed. And as you know, you can reach out to Laura to get more information as well. Again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to being with you next week.